right. Hi, guys. How's it going? We'll give everyone a couple more minutes to show up. I see Sophie's got her tooth. A lot of you guys are all set. There's Cash Man with his box. I see everyone. Oh, yeah. Oh, Rivers is there. All kinds of Stella there. Where's Stella? Stella's there somewhere. Oh, terrific. Well, you guys, I'm excited about today. I got to tell you, if any of you guys have ever heard me talking, you know that what we're talking about today is not just one, but two of my favorite dinosaurs of all time. And of course, if you get out your expedition card, expedition number 7, if you do have that, we are talking about Allosaurus and Stegosaurus. That's right. Two Jurassic, big, massive dinosaurs that did not get along very well. And two of my favorite, and one of the reasons, or the main reason that these two are my favorite dinosaurs is some of you guys probably know, Allosaurus right here is the first dinosaur fossils I ever found. So it's kind of special to me. Stegosaurus is one of my favorites just because it's so cool. It's so unique, and it's just an incredibly strange dinosaur. And I found footprints from Stegosaurus right down the street from where we're sitting, right from where I'm talking to you guys right now. So what we're gonna do, if you have your cards, Expedition 7, you're gonna dig out your Allosaurus tooth. That's right, not the T-Rex. The T-Rex tooth is the real big chunky one, right? Allosaurus is the more slender one. Yeah, I see you guys got him right there. Everyone hold them up. Sophie's got hers. I think Rivers has got his. Yeah, there you go. Allosaurus, that is a cast from a real Allosaurus tooth right there, guys. And that would have been a scary thing to have to deal with. Let's start with Allosaurus. Here's Allosaurus right here. Allosaurus was kind of like T-Rex's great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaddy, okay? As you guys know, not all the dinosaurs all lived together at the same time. Allosaurus lived 80 million years before T-Rex ever walked the planet. So did Stegosaurus. Stegosaurus lived 80 million years before Triceratops ever walked the planet. So these dinosaurs are eons of time separated from a lot of the ones you know like T-Rex and Triceratops. Allosaurus was about 30 feet long, about 10,000 pounds, but believe it or not, Allosaurus's bite wasn't as strong as you would think it is. You look at T-Rex, T-Rex is 20,000 pounds and 40 feet long, and T-Rex could bite a car in half. Allosaurus had more of an elegant jaw, meaning it was shaped a certain way to do a certain amount of damage on another dinosaur to try and eat it, but it didn't have the power of like a T-Rex. So really, it had about as strong a bite as an African lion. So really, even though it's about 7 or 8 times larger than an African lion, its bite force is about the same as a lion, which is kind of weird. But what it did have was these teeth. These teeth that you guys have in your hands. And what is so unique about Allosaurus's teeth, as with a lot of teeth from many animals, including dinosaurs, you get that serration on one side of the tooth, right? Like a steak knife. You'll get that on just one side of the tooth, right? You've seen your parents cutting meat or cutting turkey or something with a big knife. Usually one side of that knife is the super sharp part, and the other side of that knife you can touch and it's okay, right? Well, Allosaurus had that sharp edge on both sides of his tooth. So if you look at an Allosaurus tooth, it's like a double-edged knife. It would have gone right through another dinosaur. And that's pretty much what it did. It could open its mouth, not just like this, but it could open its mouth super wide and slam those teeth down on another unsuspecting dinosaur and really do some damage. Now, Allosaurus, another one of Allosaurus's features was these big arms right here. Allosaurus had arms that were probably about as big as my arms. They were probably about this size, but it had huge fingers with enormous claws, and it could really grab something and just chow on it. It's kind of like if you imagine a great white shark, right? That's a scary creature. A great white shark is probably one of the most ferocious fishes, or definitely one of the most ferocious sharks in all of our seas. I would like to go down in a cage and see a great white, but I would never want to swim in an ocean near a great white without any cage, right? It's really, really dangerous creatures. Great whites get to be about 18, maybe 20 feet long on the big side nowadays, and that's a huge great white. Imagine Allosaurus as a 30-foot great white that can chase you on the land with huge hands that can grab you. That is a scary animal. But one of the things that we always see with Allosaurus in a lot of photographs and drawings is like this scene right here. And that, of course, is Allosaurus getting ready to take on Stegosaurus. And that picture right there looks like Stegosaurus has got stuck in some mud, and Allosaurus is taking totally advantage of the situation and is going to have himself some food, right? So if we put Allosaurus on hold for a second and talk about Stegosaurus. They lived at the same time. We find their fossils in the same rock and the same layers. We find their footprints right near each other. So we know without any doubt that they lived together. I see some people have some hands up. We're going to do some questions in just a couple of minutes, okay? Let me get this information out, and then we'll totally get your question, I promise. So Stegosaurus, we know they lived at the same time. But here's a question for you guys. I'm just going to kind of put this out there because I think you probably know the answer to it. How do we know that they actually interacted with each other? How do we know that even though they lived at the same time, that they actually did fight each other? Well, as I see, is that Gabe there with his hands up?
Ryan.
Is that Ryan? Ryan, let me guess. I think I'm going to say the answer, and if you nod because you think you know what it is, teeth marks, right? Yes. See, I knew he knew that one. It's teeth marks, right? If I find Stegosaurus bones and they have big teeth marks on them, what we can do, a lot of people say, well, how do you know that it's Allosaurus? There's so many dinosaurs with teeth. How do you know it's dinosaurs? Hey, Ryan, just hold on a few minutes. We're going to do questions, I promise, okay? People say, how do you know that it's Allosaurus? Well, it's pretty simple. If I gave, let's say Sophie right there, if I gave Sophie an apple to bite and she bit into an apple, and I also gave an apple to an alligator and had it bite it, and then I gave an apple to a mountain lion and had it bite it, all of those bite marks would be totally different. There's different shaped mouths, different shaped teeth. All of them would be different. But Allosaurus has a very unique mouth like every other animal does. So if we find bite marks on Stegosaurus's bones, we can match them up with Allosaurus's teeth, right? But it goes further than that. If we look at Stegosaurus, Stegosaurus was equally as long as Allosaurus, 30 feet long, equally as heavy, 10,000 pounds, a gigantic animal just like Allosaurus. So when they battled, it would have been something to see. These two massive, super strong animals battling it out, usually to the death. I hate to say it, but dinosaurs were scary animals. Now, these giant plates on Stegosaurus's back, a lot of people think they were for defense, but they weren't for defense because they're super skinny. They're super thin, so they would have been like potato chips on his back. Definitely no defense against Allosaurus's jaws and teeth. Allosaurus could bite right through these. And they've actually found fossilized Stegosaurus backplates with bite marks right out of them from Allosaurus. So they didn't do a whole lot of good at defending itself against anything. What they did do is they helped Stegosaurus show off. Look how gigantic my backplates are. Kind of like a modern moose or a deer or a bighorn sheep with the big curly horns, right? I'm the strongest, I am the biggest, I'm the healthiest, right? That's probably what they use these for. The real defense in these guys came with that tail, right? That spiked tail that Stegosaurus had. 4 huge spikes. Spikes would have been probably over 4 feet long, super thick. Imagine the horn on a rhinoceros's head, right? That horn on a rhinoceros is strong enough to lift a car up. A rhinoceros can flip a car over with that horn. And a rhinoceros's horn was way, way, way smaller than Stegosaurus's tail spike. And Stegosaurus had 4 of those tail spikes. So imagine a 10,000 pound animal. That's about 4 times larger than a rhinoceros. So imagine how strong it was if it was 4 times larger than a rhinoceros. With that giant tail and those spikes, Stegosaurus could flip my truck over it sitting in the parking lot. He could knock it across the street with this tail, right? And if we look at this right here, look at the side. This is a tail spike from Stegosaurus right here. This is just the middle of it. This is the bone center of that tail spike. Kind of like in your guys' bodies, we have bones in our arms throughout our body, and that's what gives us strength, right? Without those bones, we're kind of just jelly, like a jellyfish, right? The bones keep us strong. Well, the same with this big chunk of bone in the middle of Stegosaurus's tail spike. It would have made it super strong. And on top of this bone, there would have been a layer of keratin. Keratin's the stuff our fingernails are made from. It's the same stuff our hair is made from. And it's the same stuff a rhinoceros's horn is made from. So on top of this piece of bone, it would have been like you guys putting a glove on. If your hand is the bone, you put your glove on. That glove is the keratin. So this would have been way bigger, way longer, and way sharper to do some serious damage when Allosaurus came lumbering along, right? Now, unfortunately, one of the things about Stegosaurus that, well, it's kind of funny, really. As much as a machine of fighting this creature was, and as beautiful and strange as it was, and as big as it was, pound for pound, Stegosaurus was not very smart. An animal that's 30 feet long and weighs 10,000 pounds only had a brain the size of a walnut or a golf ball. So it wasn't really smart. It probably all it thought about was eating and pooping and watching out for Allosaurus and having baby Stegosauruses. And that's about it. They just didn't think about an awful lot. They weren't super smart, but they were amazingly beautiful creatures. And I would love to see one. I'd love to get a time machine and go back and see one because I think they would have been something really amazing to watch. So we talked about the two of these fighting each other. Uh-oh. Lights, please. Hold on one second, guys. They just shut the lights out on us. Sit tight. All right, there we go. A little blackout there for a second. No worries. So we talked about bite marks being on Stegosaurus's bones from Allosaurus, right? But what if we flip the tables around? What might we find? Ryan's got this one. Ryan, I think you know the answer to this. Go ahead and unmute yourself and tell me, what would we find on Allosaurus's bones that tell us that Stegosaurus won the fight?
One Allosaurus fossil found a fractured Stegosaurus tail spike bone, I guess, or
You're absolutely right.
bone.
We would find
it stuck in its leg and it healed with it.
We would find injuries. We would find big giant wounds and injuries from these tail spikes. Usually what we would find is holes. If you took one of these big spikes and jammed it into the wall in your house, first of all, your parents would not be happy if you did that, but it would make a hole right in the wall, just a round hole from jamming that spike through. And that's what they would find on Allosaurus's bones is holes. Now let's think about this for just a second. Allosaurus, 30 feet long, 10,000 pounds, would have had skin like a combination of an elephant skin and crocodile skin. So we're talking about some almost bulletproof skin, serious
really thick
skin, and then giant muscles on his leg. So in order for this spike to go through that skin, through the muscle in his leg and into the bone, that is one serious strong tail, and Stegosaurus had that tail. But just like Ryan said, as I always tell you guys, the fossils never lie. And they did find a skeleton to an Allosaurus that when that Allosaurus died, it had survived over 15 broken bones in its life that had broken and healed. It had injuries. Dinosaurs' lives, as I've said before, were not easy. Their lives were a struggle every day to stay alive. They were not easy. Lots of pain, lots of injuries. But the one thing that killed that Allosaurus that the skeleton showed was a tail spike that went through its guts, through its body, and stuck out of his backbone, which means the spike went all the way through his stomach and then poked out his backbone. The fossils show that. The fossils never lie. And that's one of the things so beautiful about fossils is that fight occurred 150 million years ago, but we can read it right in the bones as we find them as they lay today, which is so amazing. So there's a little overview of Stegosaurus and Allosaurus, two incredibly amazing Jurassic dinosaurs. Both of them about 30 feet long, about 10,000 pounds. One of them a plant eater, one of them definitely a meat eater. And the fossil record shows how they interacted right here in Colorado and different parts of the Western United States. The fossils never lie, and we see it right there. So I think we're ready for some questions. So why don't we go ahead and get going on that? I know Ryan's had his hand up for a while through this. So why don't we see what Ryan's question is? Hold on one second. We'll get you unmuted, Ryan. All right. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
There you
It's
go.
not actually. It's not actually a question, but a bit about the Stegosaurus. When people first found it, they named it Stegosaurus, and by that it meant roofed lizard, because when they found it, they thought it could close them like shutters for defense.
You're absolutely right. Ryan is right. When they first discovered Stegosaurus, his name literally means roofed lizard, because at the time they didn't know that these plates stuck up. They thought that they laid flat, like he just had this roof over his whole body. You're absolutely right, Ryan. Thanks for throwing that in. That's an absolutely perfect fact about Stegosaurus' name. What's that?
But theories today suggest that it was rather to impress females or other males, or it is a cooling system to the body.
Exactly. And we have a lot of animals like that, with the exception of the cooling system. We have animals like elk and moose, bighorn sheep, and the big males usually have the largest antlers to show off how powerful they are. So you're absolutely right. To have those big plates would have been to kind of show off. And then some scientists think they were like solar panels. All the blood flowing up through those could be like solar panels, and the sunshine helped warm them up or cool them off if they got too hot. So excellent job, Ryan. Good, buddy. Thank you so much. All right, next question. We got to move on, Ryan. Sorry, we only have a little bit of time. Hold on one second.
All right. Sophie asked,
Sophie,
how do you know what time a dinosaur lived?
how do you know what time a dinosaur lived? Like, you mean like the Jurassic, how we know it lived in the Jurassic period? Well, if we go back and look at the Earth's history, it's buried in rocks. And rock layers are much like the pages of a book or a magazine. As you go further back in that book, they get older and older. If you get to the top of it, like the top of this magazine, this is kind of like represents today. That might be yesterday, and then the day after. And as you move further back in time, you go way down and back and back. And when you know what layers you're in, if you know what one layer is, it's kind of like the alphabet. If I find layer D, then I know on one side is C and the other side is E, right? Does that make sense? So if we find those certain layers, that teaches us what time frame we're in. And there's particular rock layers that are very recognizable around the world. And right here in Colorado, we have one called the Morrison Formation. And when they use the word formation, that means rocks. So they call them the Morrison rocks. And they're a particular layer. You guys have all driven through Colorado or seen pictures. You can probably see in your hometown, you see the rocks and you see different colors and lines in the rocks. Those are the time layers. So the Morrison Formation is one of the most famous ones, and because it's a very, very light colored gray. It's not red, it's not dark brown, it's not black, it's a light gray color. So we know that that's the Morrison Formation. And if we know that's the Morrison rocks, then either before or after would tell us what those time periods are. And it's the Morrison rocks where we find all these guys. That's where all the Jurassic dinosaurs are, the Stegosaurus, the Allosaurus, Apatosaurus, Brachiosaurus. All those big dinosaurs from the Jurassic are all in that particular rock formation. Does that make sense, Sophie? It's kind of like if you're reading the alphabet and you know one letter, you know what's on the other side and the other side of that. So it kind of teaches us where everything lies. But that's a great question. All right.
I believe there's also
a question.
I believe there's also another theory that's called carbon dating.
Well, carbon dating is something that's a little more technical, Ryan. So we usually use the book pages theory to start with.
Okay. Stella asked, did Allosaurus live longer than T-Rex?
Stella, great question. Nice to see you, sweetie. Did Allosaurus live longer than T-Rex? Terrific question. Both of those dinosaurs usually didn't live much past the age of 30 years old. T-Rex usually was around 28, maybe 29 would be an old one. 30 would be a really old one. Allosaurus was similar to that. And the reason that they didn't live really long, like 50 or 80 or 70 years old, is because their lives were really difficult. They had to fight all the time. So their fighting eventually would catch up to them, and their bodies would start to weaken or break down because they survived so many injuries from fighting. So the big meat eaters, the big theropod meat eaters, usually didn't live that long, like T-Rex, Allosaurus, Ceratosaurus, Giganotosaurus, even maybe Spinosaurus. Though Spinosaurus probably life wasn't too violent because it was in the water a lot, catching fish. But that's not much past about 28, 29, 30 years old. 30 would be a really old dinosaur for a T-Rex or an Allosaurus. And you're probably wondering, well, how do we know that? How do you age a dinosaur? Well, if you guys ever look at the inside of a tree, what do you see in the inside of a tree? You see rings, right? You see the little lines in the tree. And if you count those rings, it tells you how old that tree is. Dinosaur bones are very similar to that. You can see rings in the bones that tell you little growth spurts, just like you guys have growth spurts. All of a sudden, one year, you'll grow a bunch and you'll have to get new clothes, right? You guys are not the size of babies anymore, so you're obviously growing. You got new clothes. You're not wearing diapers. You're getting bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. Same with dinosaurs. And as they grew, that showed in their bones. There was like lines and rings as they got bigger and bigger. So that's what helps us figure out how old they were. Terrific question, Stella. So your answer, about 28 or 29 years old, right about there. All right, next question.
Gabe asked, how strong was an Allosaurus bite compared to a T-Rex bite?
Gabe asked, how strong was an Allosaurus bite compared to T-Rex? Compared to T-Rex, believe it or not, Allosaurus's bite was like nothing. It was not strong. Allosaurus was about 7 times bigger than an African lion and had the same bite force as an African lion. Now, African lion is a strong bite force, but compared to an animal that's 30 feet long and 10,000 pounds, that's not really strong. So they think what Allosaurus did mainly is it used those teeth like a whole bunch of knives. And as it attacked something, it stabbed its face right into it and made a lot of damage. So it bled a lot and it just couldn't keep up. And from all the blood loss, it would drop dead. Now, T-Rex, on the other hand, as you probably know, Gabe, T-Rex has the strongest bite of any animal that ever lived so far discovered. Stronger than anything, way stronger than Spinosaurus. Even though Spinosaurus was bigger, Spinosaurus's bite was not as strong as T-Rex. Giganotosaurus was bigger than T-Rex, but T-Rex had a stronger bite. T-Rex's face was meant for crushing. It was like, if you ever see one of those machines at a wrecking place where they can drop a car in a machine and the machine just squishes it down to a little square, T-Rex's mouth was meant for crushing and biting. So it had like the strongest bite of any animal so far discovered. So compared to Allosaurus, Allosaurus's bite was like nothing. T-Rex was way stronger. All right, next question.
There's still the Megalodon, though. But that lived in a different era.
Right, Megalodon was a shark that lived 50 million years after the dinosaurs. And we don't know that Megalodon's bite force was even that much. We don't know what it was, but it was big.
Debated,
it was strong for sure. I think it's hard.
Theory might be that it's a bit stronger, a bit less stronger.
Well, there's no way to really know that because Megalodon, what it did is it would attack a whale by biting it so much that the whale just died from all of its blood going out of its body. So you don't need a strong bite to do that. You just need to be able to damage it badly.
It would bite off its fins and then.
Exactly. All right, next question.
But it's harder to tell because when a Megalodon dies.
What's that, Ryan?
Sinks to the bottom. But it's harder to tell because sea creatures like the Megalodon, they die and then they sink to the bottom of the ocean and then they erode and then creatures like crabs eat them and then
Exactly. Plus with sharks, what's a shark's body made out of? Do you know what
keratin?
Body's made out of?
Not keratin, cartilage. The same thing that are yours.
Body. So sharks don't have bones
more
like you guys.
It's more flexible than bone, but more delicate.
Like your ears and nose. All right, do we got another question out there? Hold on one second, Ryan. I think we got one more.
Rivers has one.
Rivers has one. Rivers, what's your question? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
My question is, how fast was Allosaurus?
Great question. How fast was Allosaurus? You know what? Like a lot of big animals, they probably could run pretty quickly for a short distance. And then because they're so heavy, they'd have to stop and rest. Like an elephant, for example. An elephant can run pretty quick, but not for a long, long period of time, right? If you put an elephant and a wolf next to each other, I mean, the wolf's going to be a little bit faster, but the wolf can also sustain that running for a long, long time. It's just made to run. An elephant is not made to run. It's a gigantic, it's the largest land animal, I should say. And it just doesn't have the endurance to continue to run for a long, long period of time. So I would guess Allosaurus in short spurts was probably pretty quick. Not as fast as probably a horse, but maybe faster, faster than a cow. Maybe not as fast as a horse, but there's no way to really tell. But they probably were pretty quick in short bursts. But then their weight would catch up and they would just kind of have to slow down. So basically what they would want to do is they would want to wait and try and surprise their prey. They might try and hide and wait for an unsuspecting plant eater to come walking up, and then they would jump on it or pounce, run for a short period and grab it. But if that animal got away from it, it wouldn't be able to keep up. You know what's a really good comparison? If you ever watch a cheetah hunt, cheetahs are the fastest land animal on
But
Earth
in
right
Paula,
now. But they can't
in
sustain it
Paula
that
is like
long.
20
So
miles.
when they run,
Small-
if they miss their chance, they're exhausted. They got to sit and rest for a long time. So you'll see lots of times cheetahs, they don't get any food. Like 1 in 10 times they'll get food, and they'll miss a lot of times because they're exerting so much energy to get that food that once if they miss it, they're just so tired. They gotta rest for quite a while before they can try again. So it's all about exerting all your energy and whether you have energy left to keep running. But I think something like Allosaurus or even T-Rexes, they could go for a short period, then they would have to stop. Whereas like a raptor, for example, raptors are lighter weight. They're built for running, so they could sustain that probably a lot further. Yeah, great question, though. Great question. Ryan, what's your question?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I actually just read an article, and one way to kind of estimate the speed of a dinosaur is by measuring their hip bone length, the distance between their tracks, and
Well, you can measure their stride. You can measure how far between the right foot and the left foot as they take a step. But it's hard to measure actually how fast they were running, But you're right. You can look at
it's more like a guess.
and measure the distance between them, and that'll give you an idea of how tall that animal was for sure. Yeah, and by the shape of the footprint, you can tell if it's walking or running, which is kind of cool too.
All right.
And
Oh, Cash has a question. My man Cash down there in Texas, outside Austin, Texas. Cash, what do you got for me, buddy?
He said, were Stegosaurus and Allosaurus alive when the meteor struck?
Great question, Cash. Really great question. Were Stegosaurus and Allosaurus alive when the meteor struck? They were not. They actually had gone extinct many, many, many millions of years before the asteroid ever struck. When we talk about the asteroid, I'm talking about the asteroid, right? The one that knocked out the dinosaurs pretty much. That one came about 80 million years after Allosaurus and Stegosaurus were around. And you probably ask yourself, well, what made Allosaurus and Stegosaurus go away then? Well, that's a great question. They were in the Jurassic period. Remember, there's the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous time periods. And all three of those are dinosaur times, right? The end of the Jurassic period, that started to change because the Earth started to change. The temperature on the Earth started to change. The hot and cold started to change. So a lot of plants died. A lot of things just started changing a lot. And a lot of animals couldn't adapt to that change. It'd be kind of like Cash. If all the clothes you have right now are shorts and t-shirts and sandals where you live, and all of a sudden, starting tomorrow, for the next 10 years, it snowed 5 feet every day and was freezing cold. But all you had was shorts and t-shirts and sandals. That would be really difficult to do anything, right? Now, that's an extreme example, but that's kind of how the Earth changed at the end of the Jurassic period, going into the Cretaceous period. So the Earth changed so much, the food changed, the plants died, and when the plants die, the plant eaters die. When the plant eaters die, the meat eaters die. So everything just starts changing. That's a terrific question, Cash. So the answer is no, the asteroid did not strike at the same time as the Allosaurus and Stegosaurus. Allosaurus and Stegosaurus were long gone. They were way part of Earth's memory and history by the time the big asteroid struck. Good question. I love that. All right, do we have any more questions out there? You guys are asking some terrific questions. I really like these.
Looks like Ryan's got one more.
Ryan's got another question. All right, Ryan, what do you got there, buddy?
So part of the reason why some big dinosaurs or non-smart or some dinosaurs on the less smarter side, like Stegosaurus,
Right?
it's hypothetical that they have a secondary brain located near their butt, which would also probably help Stegosaurus steer its tail a bit.
That was a theory that they pretty much took care of it. They realized that is not the case. They didn't have two brains. That was the theory for a while because Stegosaurus's brain was so small, they thought, well, how can this animal operate with a brain that small? That's like having a full-size pickup truck and having a little wind-up toy engine in it.
That's
like,
the size of a hot dog.
A pickup truck that big. So you're right. The theory was they must have had a secondary brain somewhere to help it operate and live, but it didn't. It just had a tiny, tiny brain.
And one more thing.
Yeah.
I actually read an article about how to outrun a T-Rex. It was very similar with the cheetah and an impala. It actually compared the two. So it said it's like the impala could run at like 40 miles per hour, but for a longer distance and make sharper turns, while the cheetah could when an animal like a cheetah, for example, is faster, it gives up a lot of its mobility.
Right, exactly. Imagine going 70 miles an hour running and you trip and fall. You're going to get hurt pretty bad. So yeah, they were not as agile. They ran straight pretty much. Great bit of information there, Ryan. Sophie's got a question. Sophie, what do you got?
I don't exactly have a question. I just kind of want to say something about Stegosaurus's brain. It's like as big as a golf ball, so that means if you were golfing and you had a machine that could turn it into any animal's brain you wanted, and you wanted to turn it into Stegosaurus's brain, it wouldn't change any. It would just stay the same size
You could just
as
use
a
the same golf clubs. So you could say, I'm going to go to the driving range and hit some golf balls. Wait, you can hit golf balls? Actually, sorry. I'm going to hit some Stegosaurus brains today because my golf clubs fit it just perfect. All right, you guys, I got to run. I got another show coming up I got to set up for. You guys, as always, awesome. Great stuff. Great questions. Ryan, thanks for all the information. Great stuff. We'll see you guys on next Saturday. I think it's prehistoric sharks. Prehistoric sharks on Saturday. See you guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye, Billy.
Bye.